Well, we are in here this week, and I'm excited to meet and get to talk with Andrea. Andrea, welcome.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm excited to be here with you.
Yeah, this is a joy, and you bring a lot of expertise and a lot of things that definitely speak to our audience. And today we're going to talk about how we cannot hack our way out of better health, specifically with type 1. And I know this, my listeners in this community here, we're generally over 40 and we are experiencing hormonal issues too. So we could definitely kind of go down that road too, because sometimes it can be all in the same bucket, and it's different for
Yes.
everybody. But it's a great topic. So can you start and share your journey? What inspired you to get into functional nutrition? And you founded the Functional Nutrition Alliance. So I would love to
Yes.
hear your story.
Yeah. Like you, I'm really passionate about helping people with autoimmunity and with chronic health conditions. And what I do at the Functional Nutrition Alliance is train other coaches and clinicians to work with this population. For me, this started back in April of 2000 when my late husband, Isamu, was diagnosed with a very aggressive brain tumor. And
Mm.
I was introduced to some of the gaps in our medical system. And I don't say that to issue any disdain for our medical system. It's very good at a lot of things. And thank goodness he had
Mm.
surgeries and chemotherapy and radiation. But I realized two important things that kind of spurred my journey. Number one was that everybody with the same diagnosis is treated the same. So there are protocols for how people are treated, and also that people are treated like their diagnosis. So he was basically a walking brain tumor, even though he was 31 years old at the point of his diagnosis. So that really woke me up to some of these gaps and some of these needs to look a little differently at chronic health challenges. Meanwhile, I think my own autoimmune condition that wasn't diagnosed for many years after he died was sort of brewing. So I started on this journey of trying to control the signs and symptoms that I was experiencing through diet and lifestyle. And I think that's something that many of us go through, particularly as we age and our hormones start to shift the terrain in what's happening in our bodies. So I started out back, this is my husband was given 6 months to live. He died 2.5 years later. I was actually pregnant at the time of his diagnosis. So our son was 19 months old when his dad died. And again, this is back in April of 2000 that he was diagnosed, and later in 2002 that he passed away. But this really started my kind of journey into this exploration of filling the gaps in healthcare and recognizing that many people with chronic health challenges, including hormone issues, including autoimmunity, are left behind. And that's when I started in practice in 2009 after extensive education, and then built a school for providers that has grown. I've trained over 8,500 practitioners in over
Mm.
68 countries. And my work continues to evolve now. So that's the
Mm.
truncated, but sorry, that was a little long story.
No, no, yeah, you just and then first of all, I want to um just my condolences for what you've
Thank you.
experienced. Yeah. And it led you to the path you are today.
Yes.
Definitely some we'll call it good came from it and continues to come from it. So yeah, we appreciate what you turned into something that really does serve us
Yes.
and
Thank
brings
you.
back to our healthcare system.
Yes.
Yeah. What functional nutrition, how does that differ differ from conventional methods?
Yeah, yeah. So the first thing I always like to do, and I love this question, is really identify
Mm-hmm.
what is functional medicine, what is functional nutrition. People may be familiar with it, but there are three primary tenets of a functional practice. One is the therapeutic partnership, and we'll talk about that today. So the patient and the provider should be in a relationship where both of them have expertise. And what
Mhm.
we as patients have expertise in is ourselves. Number
Mhm.
two is looking for the roots, meaning we ask, why is this happening? Not just what do I do about it? Going back to that idea of getting out of the protocol thinking. And number
Mhm.
three is a systems based approach, appreciating systems biology. The gut's connected to the brain, blood sugar is connected to our hormones, and vice versa,
Mhm.
understanding those internal physiological connections. Functional medicine and functional nutrition differ in what our focuses are. So,
Mhm.
functional medicine acknowledges dietary and lifestyle change, but it might be delivered in a handout. In functional nutrition, we're doing the deep dive into understanding the individual, their relationship with their body, the food, their history, all the things that are unique to them, and understanding, especially with complex health issues, that things are multifactorial. To answer your question with that in mind,
Mhm.
conventional nutrition looks at the food, good or bad, right or wrong, outside the body. Functional nutrition embraces those three tenets, and particularly the systems biology, recognizing that where food meets physiology, your physiology is what makes it functional. So I'm
Mm.
really anchored on the individual and training people to understand broccoli, it's not good or bad. Coffee, not good or bad. Red wine, not good or bad. That's the science of nutrition that exists outside the body.
Mm.
Functional nutrition is what exists inside your body.
Yeah, I love that approach. And you know, that's how I was trained as well. I went to IIN, and it really is. And it's so funny because our program really focused on what we called the primary foods, because
Yes.
it's really the outside influences that are going to not only impact what we choose to eat, but how our body responds and what we get back from it. So I love that. And root cause methodology, which you just explained, because it really is looking at the whole person. And you know, I think that's a real important term as well, because I think even in the diabetes space, I think there's a lot of comparison um, with numbers, and you know how we're doing with our, you know,
Right.
I'll call it control, but how we're dealing with life with diabetes. But so many things change. I know I've talked about this a lot on the show, but I think reiterating is so much important. But how individual we all are, and even when we figure it out, guess what? Another stage is going to happen, especially for women, because we
Yes.
are always in this hormonal flux really our entire life. And we've got to respond to that. And it's so nice, so much easier to go through this when we have practitioners like yourself who understand this and don't put us in a box, don't treat us like other patients, really look at us as unique individuals and as ourselves. So I love that approach. Yeah.
Yeah, and the mantra to all the work that I do, and I think that, if you don't take anything away from this conversation except this mantra, it reframes our thinking. And that mantra is everything is connected, we
Mm.
are all unique, and all things matter. And that
Mm.
really speaks to the functional nutrition matrix, which I've designed off of the Institute of Functional Medicine's matrix, that really helps to reflect everything is connected. That's what's going on inside the body. We are all unique. We all have different genes and different factors that influence our daily life, like you're talking about, but also what gets us here and now.
Yeah.
And all things matter. Sleep matters, poop matters, lunch
Hmm.
matters, all things matter. So everything is connected. We are all unique. All things matter helps us to get out of the noise that is
Yeah.
always guiding us towards the next quick fix.
Hmm. Yes. And speaking of quick fixes, so you know the word hack, and we hear this in the diabetes community amongst ourselves. And I think so. What do you when you think of the word hack? Because it's thrown around everywhere, not just within not just within chronic disease. I think it's weight loss, that whole industry. Oh my gosh, right? It's as as humans, people, we want to feel good. And some of us want that quicker fix. Quick seems to be, because quick is something that you can notice the difference right away. I think the hardest part and maybe you can add to this as well with the clients that you work with, is just that disconnect with really how long it can take for your body to respond to good habits. And hacks or quick fixes are not sustainable. Um, yeah.
Yeah. I think that, I call it the quick fix trap. And I think
Mm,
that it really depends on who we are. And for your audience, Melissa, for you and I who have autoimmune conditions, they are chronic, they are multifactorial, and they
mhm,
are reoccurring. If someone is hacking their health, or biohacking, as it is often called, or
yeah.
bio optimizing, I don't think there's anything wrong with that if you are a person who's just looking to get a little better from where you are. You don't have a big issue that you're navigating that took many years and many factors to coalesce into
Mm,
a sign, a symptom, or a diagnosis. I have a lot of systems that I use to teach people. And
okay.
when it comes to autoimmunity, I call it 3 roots, many branches.
Mm,
When we're biohacking, we're missing all the roots and recognizing the factors that influence them in favor of chasing after the promised land, the candy land that's going to get us where we think
mhm,
it's going to take us, where it took that social media influencer, our
yeah.
sister, our niece, or whoever is giving us this information. And the truth is, when it comes to chronic conditions, that we have to slow it down to speed it up. When we try to
Mm,
go too fast with a diet or a tool or a practice, it's likely only a piece of the puzzle. And what I see in my practice is that it then leads to more frustration
mm,
because of lost money, lost time, and
mhm,
not better results. And
mhm,
it may not be that the practice or the tool isn't good, it's that it needs more context, it needs
mm,
more support. And sometimes the tools and the practices just aren't good. There's a lot of things out there
yeah.
that we're being fed, so to speak, that aren't really there for us. And that's why I prefer the systems thinking versus the grab and go
Yeah,
model.
I get that. Yeah. And it's a term I use is foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's the same thing, it's just like, you can't add another level to a house with a hack or some way or twisting way to optimize whatever symptom you're feeling. You've got to strengthen the foundation.
Yeah, it's like
And yeah,
wallpapering the guest room before you built the house, right?
right, exactly. It's like first things first. But yeah, that can get all convoluted and very cloudy when people are in it, right? I think
Yes.
that is the hardest part, is just kind of seeing through that. And again, it's real helpful to to talk with people like us that have been through it, because you and I have been through this. I've got my own autoimmune things, and with hormone changes. So I was lucky enough with my training and my and the resources I had available. Trust me, menopause, and now I'm in postmenopause with type 1 diabetes. You have got to get some support. We cannot go through this alone. You've got to know what to expect. And that's what I do as a coach, is just to equip them and say, okay, this is what's going to likely happen. Okay, it's worse. It's a little different for everybody, but generally speaking, just putting the writing on the wall. But the foundation has to be built. And just like you say, now, do you work with any specifically around hormones, or,
Oh, yeah. I
and
mean, the
hormones is
three
a broad
roots.
topic. I know there's a lot of
Yeah. And I have
hormones, but
Hashimoto's. So also
yeah, huh?
postmenopausal with Hashimoto's. So
Mm-hmm.
the 3 roots, many branches approach, and I'll tell you the 3 roots.
I would love to
For the
hear.
three
Yeah,
roots,
please.
many branches, if you can envision a tree and the
Mm-hmm.
manifestation of the leaves and the bark on the branches, that is any sign, symptom, or diagnosis. So visually, right now, anybody who's listening, can put those signs, symptoms, and diagnoses in the branches of the tree. That might be type 1, it might be Hashimoto's, it might be some other autoimmune condition or celiac disease, it could be fatigue or migraines or belly fat, whatever it is, brain fog. Stick it in the branches right now in your mind's eye. The three roots for any chronic condition are going to be your genes, digestion, and inflammation. All three are activated and need to be addressed when we have branches that aren't quickly going away. So, chronic branches, I'm sick and I'm not getting better. I tried XYZ, this pill, this protocol. I searched out that practitioner, not getting better. Those are branches. Those roots, genes, digestion, and inflammation, all live in soil. So we can't change our genes, but we can influence the expression of our genes. So that soil, or as I like to call it, the circle of influence with our genes, is our food, our movement, our environment, and our mindset. And each of those roots has a soil or a circle of influence of 4 factors, and we can expand from there. So that's one model I use to help people understand, if you're focused on what's the protocol for Hashimoto's or what diet do I go on for belly fat, you are not going to get to the roots, which do include hormones. And even with the hormones and hormone issues are a branch. They are not actually a root unless we're dealing with something like blood sugar. Blood sugar is going to impact all of our hormone expression.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, and just like you say, we are individuals. So the root, those 3 pillars, that foundation that you're talking about, in our case, and I guess with any chronic disease, would that I'll call it the factor. It's really going to be a main driver that is really going to affect the branches, as you were. And I love that
All
visual.
three. Yeah, all three of
Yeah,
them. So
yeah.
we don't have those chronic health challenges without those 3 roots, but our focus is the soil, and food is going to be different for each one of us. Movement is going to be
Yeah.
different for each one of us. And this is where the individuality comes in. So, with food, I'm going to talk about quality, quantity, diversity, and timing as its circle of influence. But again, we can't say, well, should I intermittent fast in terms of timing? The answer is always, it depends, because everything is connected. We are all unique and all things matter. So being able to see through systems thinking helps us to be better practitioners, but I want to make sure we help people leave with how to think about what they can do coming out of this more broad discussion of reframing the way we actually look at your case.
Yeah, I love that. And I like to point to the whys, and you're doing that as well, because that's exactly what this whole theory kind of spells.
Yes.
It really is understanding, and I think we are our number one health advocate. We know our bodies the best, and the symptoms you're talking about, and just knowing the why. And this is what I coach as well. I just did a webinar on this recently. Again, the symptom is weight loss, so trimming down after 40. But I came in with a little bit of a twist, because we're going to talk about whatever that ideal weight is eventually. But it is really about getting to, just like what you were saying, just really unpacking really what's going on foundationally with their health, and finding out the whys, because it's all going to point to really the end result. And what the great thing about weight loss is, weight gain is a symptom as well.
Absolutely.
It's pointing to other things. I think people put it in their own silo. They think, well, I'm eating too much, I'm not exercising. That's the old thinking. They don't really understand all the other things that are impacting what their waist circumference is, or whatever that scale is that they're measuring their success on. It's just it's just so interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
physiologically, weight loss resistance is a branch, and there might be things in the food, movement, environment, and mindset we need to look at. There may be
sure.
digestive functions, because
Hmm.
I will say, if you're talking about nutrition without talking about digestion, you've left functional behind. Like,
There you
you're not
go.
actually
Right.
talking about things. So, you know, three non-negotiables that I would give people to focus on are sleep, poop, and blood sugar balance, which brings us back to, what is that foundation where we're not hacking it? Let's say a continuous glucose monitor as a
Hmm.
hacker. And I am not against a continuous glucose monitor, but I think if we don't look at the context in which we are looking at the information, we miss the actual opportunity to learn about ourselves, and we
Mm,
associate what we're seeing on that report with food alone. And as you
mm,
wisely said earlier, Melissa, food is not the only issue that's going to impact those numbers. So
yeah.
that's a really good example, just bringing us back to that idea of
Hmm.
hacking. A CGM is a great tool at the right time in the process,
Hmm.
when you understand yourself. If you're not sleeping, if you don't have the foundations, like you're calling them, of how to balance your blood sugar dialed in, you are getting more data before you actually need it. And this
Mm,
is my problem with a lot of functional testing. We should only be testing or using these devices to fine tune our understanding, and people are often bypassing the
mm,
critical information we learn from, like you said, being our best advocate.
hmm.
Bypass being our best advocate, and we're putting it into the hands of a device, a
Mm,
scale, a test, a piece of paper, a
right, right,
ring,
right.
whatever we're using to hack.
Hmm.
We've left our own understanding of ourselves. And
Hmm.
the analogy I will often use is, we live in an age where you don't buy a pair of jeans without trying on lots of different ones and knowing which waist size works best for you, mid rise, high rise, low rise,
Right.
which brand, how much, stretch you want or don't want. We are so particular about our jeans, our bra sizes, our bed softness, our Spotify accounts. Personalization and knowing thyself is so en vogue today, except when it comes to health. We want to
Mm,
buy into what everybody else says. We
hmm.
want information that's outside of ourselves, not inside of ourselves. And
Hmm.
that's really what I want to invite us to question and combat, with this recognition of, I actually know more. I can be the best partner for my medical team when I know more about me, and I'm
Hmm.
able to come forward with that information.
Yeah, yeah, that was very nicely explained. I appreciate you. So what are some overwhelm free ways that we can pinpoint our health patterns? Things
Yeah.
like, just like you said, the sleep, the digestion, and which is ultimately the energy levels, which is, and I think that's so closely tied, especially with diabetes. Anytime we get those hiccups throughout the day, and sometimes we can wake up with a high blood sugar, and physiologically, mentally, emotionally, it really can be a downward spiral for the day. And it is so important. I think there has to be a set point where you just focus on. I like to start with the first, the morning times.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and it's interesting because you speak into sleep a lot too, and it confuses people because I say, yeah, we're going to start with the morning, but it's really starting about the night before.
Absolutely.
But because the morning affects the sleep affects the morning, and how closely tied. I think a lot of people they don't realize that importance. They don't understand that connection with all of it, right?
Yeah, there's so many different places we can focus. And I really like to invite people to slow down and focus on one thing at
One
a
thing.
time and
Hmm.
see how that starts to shift things. So, I'm going to give you my 3 food principles because I do not subscribe to any one
Okay.
dietary theory. But before we get there, I just want to talk about hydration. Like, if
Mm.
you're wondering, where do I start? Just check in. Are you actually hydrating like you think you're hydrating? Hydration can lead, or dehydration could lead to a lot of fatigue. It could
Hmm.
lead to anemia. I can look at somebody's red blood cell counts and their CBC with differential and say, are you hydrating? And they'll be
Ah,
like, actually, no. And it's like, okay,
ah, I love
you
it. Yeah.
need your blood to
Hmm.
pump to your heart and your
Hmm.
brain. And when you're dehydrated, you're not going to have that happening. So,
Hmm.
simple thing, and I like to call it the simplicity on the other side of complexity, because of
Mm.
course we all learn these simple things and know we should, but in functional nutrition, I'm understanding how that principle and that habit is actually impacting our physiological function. Like
Mm.
sleep impacts your microbiome. It's not just about taking a probiotic, right? Understanding those physiological connections. So I'm just going to say, if you're wondering where to start, really just first check into your hydration because can make a big difference in a number of things. Then I want to speak into my 3 dietary principles. And again, I do not subscribe to any one dietary theory. And by dietary theory, I mean keto, paleo, autoimmune paleo,
Yeah.
intermittent fasting. Those are theories
Hmm.
that have been studied minimally, I need to say, outside the body or in controlled situations.
Hmm.
The number of books on intermittent fasting far exceed the number of studies on intermittent
Mm.
fasting. And I'm
Interesting.
not
Yeah.
saying study evidence is the be all end all because it's influenced by a bunch of different factors, but we
Yeah.
have to realize how popular science takes things over and makes us all kind of in a capitalized society make these things the norm.
Hmm.
I'm not against intermittent fasting. I just think it depends on the
Hmm. There
individual
you
and a
go.
number of different factors that are related to their hormones. So instead of subscribing to a dietary theory, my 3 principles are fat, fiber, protein at every meal. And if you need to know what kind of protein, what kind of fat, I'm sure you have resources, Melissa. We have resources at the
Hmm.
Functional Nutrition Alliance on the blog.
Hmm.
If you don't know, that's where you focus. Just focus there. Fat, fiber, protein. Principle
Hmm.
number 1. Principle number 2, eat the rainbow. So you're
Hmm.
going to get lots of your phytonutrients, more fiber. It's fun to play with. You can start to look, what colors am I getting? What colors do I get more of in this season versus that
Hmm.
season? And principle number 3 comes back to this notion of bioindividuality. Know your yes, no, maybe list. And the
Mm.
only way you're going to know your yes, no, maybe list is by tuning in and being able to say, you know what? When I eat dairy, as an example, I notice I go to the bathroom
Right.
faster. Risk reward. I'm
Right.
then in a risk reward conversation with myself. Do I want to go to the bathroom faster? Am I worried that I'm going to be on a train ride?
Right.
How do I make a
Hmm.
decision based on what I learn about myself? And some people are in the camp of, I don't know what food impacts me negatively or positively, which means like slow down, let's focus there. And some people are so restrictive, these tend to be the clients we see, that they're
Hmm.
barely eating anything
Hmm.
because they've started trying to control what
Hmm.
they eat to influence how they feel. And that's called conditioned food hypersensitivity because
Mm.
everything is reactive because the inside body hasn't healed. And
Mm.
in that instance, we're not getting the nutrients we need to heal. So, just looking at where you are on that spectrum and
Hmm.
knowing the more you can tune in, it doesn't mean that what you learn now is forever. but just tune in. And we can do that with food, mood, poop journaling. Mood for me is any symptom. There's lots of ways we can work with a coach like yourself to understand what is impacting me without over analyzing while we're collecting the data.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's really about being in tune,
Yes.
slowing down, just like you said, and just paying attention to how we feel following a meal.
Or
And
that day or that night. So not
right,
even like not even micromanaging, but just saying, "Wow, I'm tired today.
right.
Let me just look back at the day or bring it to
Yeah.
somebody to look at with me." But being able to see, and when I talk about tracking, I know it can be triggering for folks
Mm-hmm.
too. So I
Mm-hmm.
just want to acknowledge, if you can't track right now, that's okay too. If you have a history that's been restrictive or tight, and you've tracked and had to, I'm not talking about weighing food, I'm not talking about amounts, I'm
Mm-hmm.
just talking more grossly in,
Sure, sure.
yeah,
Awareness. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, just being aware of
yes,
what they're consuming. Yeah, I
yes,
love that. And I'm sure your coaching and your program, because as we know, doctors were not educated on nutrition and
yes,
food. And I think that there's so much information out there. We have a lot of different conflicting theories about food, what's good. Eggs are good this week, next week no, coffee's good, coffee's bad. I think that's another part of it too. It's just the labeling we put on food, and
yes,
I think that might even create some of that kind of, I don't know the word, and not anticipation, but just that it twists the interpretation, or the
yeah,
the response people have around food
yeah,
based on what they think they know or what they've heard. And yeah, that can just turn into, yeah, I mean, physically we're going to feel that
yes,
tension,
totally,
right?
yeah.
That resistance.
Yes, and it's around lots of things like
Mhm.
lectins, or what
Oh,
oils we use, or
mhm.
what pan we're using. Like, there's so much information. And
Yeah.
again, we need to find our risk reward place for
Mm,
ourselves in what actually is not causing additional stress coming from all the theories that are telling us
mm,
what to do and how to do it. Because stress, if we look at the hormone hierarchy, and I said sleep, poop, and blood sugar balance, non negotiables. Blood sugar balance is the bottom of our hormone hierarchy. Then we get to insulin, then cortisol, then thyroid, then sex hormones. So
mhm,
I won't even talk to people about their sex hormones without ensuring that sleep, poop, and blood sugar balance are in place,
mm,
because hormones have to do with how we metabolize hormones. And if we focus here first, then we're
mm,
missing the opportunity for the foundation that you are talking about, that allows for sustainable results as our hormones change, as we have more stress,
yeah.
as other things happen at the
Mhm.
top. Then
Yeah.
we have the ability to bring in that balance. And a
Mm,
lot of people are going top down,
mhm.
missing the opportunity to sleep, poop, and balance their blood sugar, which
Yes.
is the foundation for hormone balance.
You have, yeah. And you bring up something that's really coming up a lot lately as women are starting to learn more. I talk a lot about bioidentical hormones. I'm on them myself. I'm a believer in it. But they just assume once they've identified, oh, I've got these symptoms, well, I'll just get on some hormones, problem solved. I'm like, no, no, we definitely, everything starts with that foundation. Let's strengthen that. And then you can have that conversation with your doctor about what hormones are going to it's kind of like the icing on the cake, but you got to bake the
Absolutely.
cake first, don't you? You got to bake
And
it.
very individualized. I mean,
Yeah.
like you, I am a believer in bioidentical hormones. They do not work for me. I do not feel good on bioidenticals. And so there's things I might need, and I kind of microdose them for what my body needs.
Hmm.
But overall, and again, I am a believer in bioidentical hormones. I am not a believer in how they are often administered. and they're
Mm,
often administered too much, too fast. So I
mm-hmm.
want to caution women to start low, go slow, one hormone at a time. So you know if you're having negative symptoms,
Yeah.
which one it's related to. Though if we're bringing in estrogen, we always want to bring in
Yeah.
progesterone because those
Progesterone.
are in a really important relationship with each
Yeah.
other. But I think people are going too fast in
I
that
agree.
desire for the quick
Yeah.
fix. They think, oh, more is better and
Mm-hmm.
more different is better.
Mm,
And
mm,
it just doesn't work like that. And you
no.
have to tune into you. And honestly, like my body did not like bioidenticals. That's my body, but that
Right.
doesn't mean I bring that approach to somebody I'm helping to make those decisions
Yeah.
for themselves. And number one thing to think about with hormone balance is the hormone metabolization,
Mm,
not the hormone markers. The biomarkers mean nothing if you cannot metabolize your hormones. The way
mm,
you metabolize your hormones: sleep, poop, blood sugar balance.
right.
Go
Right. Again.
focus there and let
Yeah.
your doctor do what your doctor does. You focus, sleep, poop,
Mm,
blood sugar balance.
yeah. Yeah. Thank you for confirming all that because it is so so true. And I've been through it myself. I was first again the practitioner, and I'm not going to really talk too much about this, but the practitioner I began with was not schooled in hormones. I assumed they knew. And my prescription was way too high on one of the formulas. So, and again, I was one of the fortunate ones that was aware of the levels and what the optimal level should be and said, whoa. And I pulled back, even though they kept saying, oh, well, it might level out. I'm like, no, no, I don't think it's going to level out. This
For
is not a
you.
happy level for me. But the
Yes.
average woman doesn't have that. So just like you say, just to reiterate, definitely find a practitioner who knows what they're doing, knows how to test, knows how to retest after
Yes.
they've prescribed, because you can't just take your stuff, go home and start taking it. Oh, I'll see you in a year. No, that is not a good practitioner. They need to be rechecking and titrating as needed. So yeah, it's just a good it's my favorite topic because it's so important right now. There's so
Yes.
much confusion, and it's real important, just to be there to, to help support. And there's always a way to find a good practitioner. And if you need help with that, you know how to find me on my website, and I could send you to a good functional medicine site that does list hormone specialist. And, some of them are telemed as well. Now, is that something that you specifically focus on as well?
Yeah, so
Okay.
hormones, you mean, or
Mm-hmm.
telemed? Yeah,
Well,
my team at the Functional Nutrition Alliance sees
okay.
patients around the globe, and certainly anything chronic is our focus. So we're not
Okay.
going to say we're focused on hormone health. I would say we're focused on chronic health issues. So we tend to come in when somebody has been around the block and they're
Okay.
frustrated, and
Mm-hmm.
we can't send them to you. Like there's a
Sure.
lot of practitioners who deal with a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
We're the sick and not getting better,
Mm,
frustrated, worked with the functional medicine docs, took all the supplements, did all the diets. That's where in our clinic we bring the expertise. And for the providers I train, then those are hopefully the resources that
okay.
people can go
Perfect.
to. I
Okay.
also just want to add to what you said, Melissa, about
Mm-hmm.
finding a good practitioner is really important. But I just want to emphasize: find yourself. The first thing I said about functional practice is a truly functional practice. And unfortunately, functional medicine has gone a bit off the rails from
Mm,
where it started. But a truly functional practice honors the therapeutic partnership. And a partner requires two people dancing, and you, the patient, have an expertise in
mm,
something your provider will never have expertise in. And if you're going in search of the perfect provider and not doing your piece of
mm,
becoming an expert in you, you're
mm,
going to miss opportunities. And by being an expert in you, I mean you have the language to talk about what works for you, what doesn't, that yes, no,
mm,
maybe. I also call it micro timelining.
mm,
I'm having difficulty losing weight. It started, and I'm not, knock on wood, fine with my weight, but like if that's my issue. It
Mm-hmm.
started in 2022 when I noticed I was going through more stress. This makes it get better, this makes it get worse. I'm a better partner right there because I micro timelined.
Yeah.
I understand the context and I'm
Mm,
giving that provider more to work with versus I have this problem, help me.
mm.
I'm bringing myself into the equation and there's a then there. So I just want to say yes to the practitioner, but we need to get back to being
It starts with ourselves
it.
for
We
sure to
have
be
to, and I
into.
don't mean
Yeah. Thank
controlling
you.
or being
Yeah.
the like being the expert in the medical
Mm-hmm.
information. I mean
Yeah.
being the expert in
In
you.
you.
Yes.
Yes. I love that. Thank you so much. Yes. That is so, so important, especially with all of this going on, because nobody knows our, we know ourselves.
Correct.
Listen to listen to what our body's telling us, right?
Absolutely.
And to not be afraid to communicate that and
Yes.
to maybe go to another practitioner if that is what is feeling good. So most definitely. Yeah. Now, do you have an example of how understanding these patterns has led to improved health outcomes for a client?
Yeah,
We'd
so
love to
I
hear
will
stories.
say I don't work individually with clients anymore because I'm in the classroom, I'm
Okay.
writing. So personally, I don't have something at the ready. So I'm going to go back in time a little bit and talk about a patient that I had who had MS. She had multiple
Mm,
sclerosis, so autoimmune condition.
mm-hmm.
When she came to see me, her name's Melissa, and I can use her name. I have permission. And when she came to see me, she had been a gymnast and a lawyer, and she had to leave her practice. She was young, she was in her 30s because she couldn't manage her fatigue. She had gained
Mm,
a lot of weight, didn't feel in her body. And it took time for us to go through the different processes of addressing those root causes and those root factors. It got to the point, and this is over several years, where her neurologist couldn't even diagnose it as MS anymore because,
mm,
like many autoimmune conditions, they are cluster syndromes,
mm.
meaning
Okay.
there isn't one diagnostic criteria. But he couldn't diagnose it as MS anymore because she didn't show the signs or the lesions of MS. So,
Mm,
what I want to say about that is it was years. It wasn't a quick fix reversal. There was no one thing. Everything we did helped us learn about the next thing to
mm,
be doing. We worked on her microbiome, her inflammation. We dialed in her food. She was partially gluten free, how that worked for MS and her understanding of
mm,
going fully gluten free. All of the things took time and practice and evolution, looking at her labs, dialing in the supplements. One of the last things we did was getting her off of birth control. And she was
mm.
nervous to get off of birth control because she had been on it to control her cycles when
Oh,
she was still
interesting.
sick. And so
Mm,
just remembering that what was true then may change as we
right.
go through our healing. And that was something we had to hold and move through together and support that her body was no longer in the same place. And
Mm,
I tell the story of Melissa because hormones were involved, autoimmunity was
yeah.
involved, there were metabolic issues involved. A lot of what she was feeling in her body was gaslit because she was small. And so
Mm,
she would say, I'm feeling like I gained weight. And the doctors would be like, what's wrong with you? You're tiny.
right.
But
Right.
understanding that that inflammation can feel like a little padding on your
Sure.
body that doesn't
Understood.
feel right. So
Mm-hmm.
just recognizing that this is a person who was
Mm-hmm.
going through a long healing journey. I call it the heal versus the ideal. And the quick fix or the biohack may exist or promise the ideal, but how do we recognize when we're in a healing place and embrace that
Mm.
healing?
Yeah, that's an amazing story. Yes, and it. good point that it can take time. Yeah.
It took
A
us
lot of
time to get here.
patience. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I know, right? So, what are some takeaways, some simple, maybe some 3 tips that can start the listeners? You've shared some amazing things. I like your 3 principles of food and nutrition was spot on, and it speaks to us in the diet, especially the fat, protein, and fiber. That's real
Yes.
important. Yeah, what can our listeners maybe walk away with and start something simple that they can, start sooner than later?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to our sleep, poop, and
Mm.
blood sugar balance. And I'm gonna say choose one and
Mm,
learn about what's going on there. So if you choose sleep and you have anything that you use to track your sleep, whether it's, a watch or a ring, or you're
right.
just noting it, just tune in, not for perfection, but for information. And I'm going
Mm,
to call this the qualitative data versus the quantitative data.
mm,
So the
mm,
ring might give me quantitative data, but I need to apply the qualitative to that. So
yeah.
I'll give you an example. I have started dancing again since the spring. If I work out in the evening doing anything but dance, it will impact my heart rate variability negatively
Mm,
and negatively impact my sleep. If
mm,
I go to dance class in the evening, my heart rate variability goes up and I have a better night's sleep. So
mm,
my ring can tell me my heart rate variability was better, my sleep score was better, but only I can apply the story of, wait, I'm watching
right.
this
The
over
why.
time.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening in dance that's impacting this positively, that if I did a bar class doesn't have the same effect? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
joy, joy, letting go. There's something happening that's an added factor. So
Yeah.
I'm just using that as an example, but what I'm going to say to our listeners is pick one of those 3 non-negotiables: sleep, poop, blood sugar balance. If you're focused on poop, just track, what do you see each day? Start playing with your fat, fiber, protein. What
Right.
happens if you add more fat? What happens if you add more fiber?
Right.
What happens if you add more protein? Do you see any
Mm-hmm.
difference? Just start playing and know, if you look up a Bristol stool chart, the
Right.
quality of your poop. You should be pooping every day, at least once a day. This is
Great
going to help with your
reminder.
hormones.
Yes, every day.
And if you're focusing on blood sugar balance,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily about measuring. Just start with that fat, fiber, protein.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
just pick one of those
I love
three.
it.
I call that the non-negotiable trifecta. Pick one and learn. Don't
Mm,
just do, learn
yeah.
about what's happening when you make small but steady
Mm-hmm.
changes that are sustainable for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Slow and steady. I love that. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
So, what is on the horizon for Functional Nutrition Alliance? Do you have anything new coming up?
Well, we are constantly training practitioners.
Mm,
I also am writing regularly at my personal website, andreanakayama.com. So
okay.
there's articles there on biohacking, on some of
Mm,
the problems with evidence-based medicine. I'm also a practitioner of narrative medicine, really anchoring in the
ah,
story. So there's more writing there. I would love to have people, read that writing,
okay.
join me for some of my free narrative medicine workshops where we do learn more about ourselves. And then that site also leads you back to the Functional Nutrition Alliance. For anybody out there, we train all sorts of, everybody from health coaches or no healthcare background to
Yeah.
doctors, nurses, dietitians, all sorts of people who are adding functional nutrition to
Yeah.
what they do.
I love that. I might be talking to you.
Yeah, I think you would
I
love it.
always love to learn. It's one thing I miss about school was when it ended because I
Yes.
just loved it. I love learning and absorbing it. So I want to thank you for being here. I appreciate your just your wisdom and your expertise and your story.
Thank you.
Back behind just what you do. And you left us with some really good tips to walk away from. And I will be sure to link everything, including your articles, that site, and so people can connect with you and find you. And again, thank you so much, Andrea, for your time.
Thank
It's been a
you.
pleasure
Thank
to
you
get
for
to
the
know
work you
you.
do. You too. I'm
Mm.
excited about all you do. It's so
Oh,
specific and necessary.
oh, yes, yes. I think so too. Right. And
Because,
it's, yes, and it's me. I mean,
yes, exactly.
it's, and I think that's exactly what your forte is as well,
Yes,
and it's not work when we live it, and it's something that we love to share
truly,
about. So, yeah, yeah,
truly.
it's a
Yes.
joy for sure. Well, thanks again. And yes, we'll be back in here next week, and be sure to connect with Andrea. Just check out the show notes to get all those links. And thanks for being here. And be sure to share the show. It's important information. And have a great week. Bye for now.